Let's get started. Once again, welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Let's go discover the gray whales of Baja, presented by Nat Hab expedition leaders Annie Van Dinther and Sophia Marino. It's a pleasure to have you both with us today. I'll hand things off to you now.
Thank you so much, Nick. We really appreciate all the hard work that you guys do to make sure that these can happen. And thank you to all of you for signing on. We think it's so great that we get to spend time talking about whales or Baja or wherever it is with people who also want to talk about these things. And I also want to thank you, Sophia, for joining me today. It's so fun to have a buddy to help me out through all of this. And you're actually coming to us from Baja. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Annie. Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to be here today also as a guest for this talk. And actually, yeah, right now I'm in Cabo. I'm 2 hours from La Paz, where I usually live. And I've been living here for 10 years. I'm in Baja, and I work as a naturalist, as an expedition leader. And this is my favorite place to be and work. And I'm so happy that I could now share a little bit with everybody.
Oh, that's great, Sophia. And so you and I have something in common. I live in Alaska. I am the guide development director for Natural Habitat Adventures and an expedition leader. And I've been going to Baja for quite a few years. And you and I are some of the only guides who guide both of our Baja expeditions. So today we're going to be sharing with everybody some information about Baja, about the gray whales, and learning some of their natural history. But we're also going to talk then at the end about the 2 different trips that we have and different ways that people could choose to come and explore this incredible place. So let's get going.
Perfect.
Okay, so first of all, we have to talk a little bit about just what is a gray whale? How do they fit into the big pictures of whales? So tell us about this picture, Sophia.
The most important thing to know is that we have 2 major groups. The baleen whales, of course, on your screen, and then the toothed whales. The obvious difference is the baleen whales, they have balens, of course, and the toothed whales, like us, they have teeth. And our gray whale that we go and see in both of our trips, we go and see baleen whales, gray whale. And in that group of baleen whales, we have different species. So if you think about a humpback, if you think about a blue whale, yes, they are also baleen whales. So in general, in this particular group, we have 4 other groups that enclose the right whales over there in the top, the pygmy right whales, the one in the middle, and then we have the largest group, which is the Balanopteridae, where we have humpbacks, fin whales, blue whales, the ones that we are most of the time associate actually as whales. And the last one, but not least, is Scriptidae, so strange name that they have. And the gray whale is located in that particular group. So just a little bit of an intro to talk about this amazing species.
So that is such a great introduction. And one of the things that I think is so special about the gray whale is the kind of baleen that they have. You know, if people were to come up here and check out a bowhead whale, which is another one of those baleen whales, they would find that they have this very long, flowy baleen. Like their baleen is taller than I am. But with the gray whales, it's this really tough, thick baleen. It's like, it's very tough and hard to the touch. And that's because they're bottom feeders, which is really unique amongst those different baleen whales. All of them are filter feeders, but the gray whales are literally sucking up a bunch of mud from the bottom of the ocean floor and then using that baleen to filter out their food. That's phenomenal adaptation.
And in that particular picture that you see right there, we can see amazing also those balens that you're talking about. This is a calf, actually, for everybody that is looking at. This is a baby gray whale. And this is one of the views that we would have in these trips. We can see it on close, they're opening and closing their mouth. So we're actually making sure that they are baleen whales and not toothed whales in a way.
There you go. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about where the whales go to and come from and all of that kind of thing. I'm up here in Alaska. I think I can even use my mouse to show you. I'm over here on the Kenai Peninsula, and right there is Homer, Alaska. I live on Kachemak Bay, and every once in a while we have a gray whale come into Kachemak Bay, but mostly they keep their migration on the outer coast because they're actually heading farther north than where I am. They're heading up to the Bering Sea, and that is where they're going to really spend their summer months gathering those calories from the bottom of the ocean floor. And then,
sorry.
No, go, you go.
And I mean, because in summer, you see them over there, you're also going to migrate with the whales to come here to Baja, right?
Migration is important for many different species on the planet, and it turns out I might be one of those that it's absolutely necessary for. So for years now, I've been migrating down to Baja. I think the first time I went was 2000, and then various seasons throughout then. I didn't get to go this year. I missed it so much because it does feel like this yearly migration. So the whales will start to make their way down south. They're going to start leaving here around, you know, September, October kind of time, and then it's going to take them a while to get down south.
Yes, they're going to continue their journey south, eventually to reach Mexico. And in Mexico, they're going to come to the Baja Peninsula, which here in the map, you kind of now see it on this red square rectangle. And this area is very important for the gray whales, and we're going to spend some time talking about this area and why they are here. If we zoom a little bit more into this whole peninsula map, we have the southern part of the peninsula because we have two states, right? The northern state of Baja and the southern state of Baja. So in the southern state that you see right now, we have 3 different lagoons where the gray whales come. The one in the north that you see over there in the circle is Scammons Lagoon. And then we have, that is actually the biggest lagoon where the gray whales come. And then we have the one in the center, that is San Ignacio Lagoon, where we go in the Nat Hab trip. And then we have in the south, Magdalena Bay, where we also go and the charter boat actually. So we access 2 of the 3 lagoons where the gray whales come in Mexico. And of course, the main question is why, right, Annie?
That's right. Why go to Mexico? And to me, this is something that I'm always asking. Do they go to Mexico or do they go to Alaska? And what I mean by that is this whole phenomena of migrating such a gigantic distance, it is the longest migration that we see from something that's not a bird, right? We've got the Arctic tern that's going from the north way down to Antarctica, but this is the longest migration. And I'm always thinking to myself, did they start in Alaska and then slowly need to move their way down? Or did they start in Mexico and move their way up? I mean, why adapt in this way?
And it's such an interesting question that their life cycle starts in Mexico. They're mating and they are born in Mexico. So we like to say they are Mexican whales, right? They have a Mexican passport in a way. But yeah, the whole life cycle starts here. And if we go back in time of what we know so far, in the evolutionary way, everything started here and then they extended the range up north. And hopefully we're going to spend some more time talking about this. We're preparing because another thing is so interesting to talk about this particular issue. Not issue, just the topic. But in Mexico, if they are born here, if they are mating here, let's go a little bit deeper into this conversation about the mating. When we go out in Magdalena Bay and in San Ignacio for the season, and the trips are run in February actually. So in February is when we see a lot of mating. What that means is that breaching, the males are breaching, are jumping like crazy. They do this whole you know, they're just show off in a way. The higher they breach, the louder the sound that creates, and then maybe the females are a little bit more attracted to that loud sound of that large male. So we see that, and we also see a little bit of the aftermath of this behavior. They come close, they are very touchy animals, they rub between each other, the males are all together and a female is in that group. So if we would see that, if we could draw it, it would be like in this draw that we see right now, where they are all together. Why they are all together? Because they don't have any boundaries. They have love for all, right? And they are, as we call them, promiscuous whales. So that means that the female is going to mate with multiple males. And it is a very interesting behavior because there's a lot of action. And as I mentioned, this happens in February. And so it is a perfect time of the year to go because you see that. You can actually see that very special moment of the gray whales just mingling around and doing their own thing.
And you know, sometimes you can actually do more than see it. You can almost feel it. I had a time with Maximo, who's one of our captains, who I absolutely adore. He and I were out with a film crew in San Ignacio Lagoon, and we had basically, if you look at this picture, the boat was the top whale. We were one of those whales. We had a female come and try to hide underneath us. And then, of course, the males were attracted to her. So that was an adventurous boat trip. I learned a few Spanish swear words from Mexico that day, but we were perfectly safe. And it was just fascinating to see the whales interacting and how they interacted with the boat. It is not necessarily a gentle process, but it of course is worth it, because after all of that adventurous mating that we get to witness, of course, the next year, we would get to see the calves that are a result of that mating. And I will say, I think this is probably one of the most special wildlife experiences that somebody can have, is getting to see these young whales, these calves, so close. And you really do get to witness the relationship between mom and calf, and then between the moms together. Sometimes I feel like we're at a whale daycare when we're there. So tell us a little bit about some of these details of the birthing and calving process.
So, for example, if this year, right, this February, they were mating, the females are the ones that start the migration back to their summer feeding grounds because they need to eat a lot to sustain themselves and now to sustain the young baby that is growing. So they go back to Annie, right, to Alaska over there, and then they're coming back. So the gestation period is between 12 to 13 months, or 1 year. That means that the following winter, we see the moms coming to the lagoons, choosing a very particular spot that I'm going to show a little bit later to have their calves. So in average, at the beginning of January, we're going to see a lot of moms having their calves also. So remember that I mentioned that in February, we see a lot of mating. It really depends on the time of the season that you come is what you get to see, right? But February is so important because you see the mating, but also, even though we see a lot of babies that are born in January, it extends to February. So you get to see both, which is super interesting and cute also to see the baby calves. They are going to stay together, these moms and calves, in the lagoons first between 3 to 4 months, depending on the mom. Researchers have noticed that the most experienced moms actually like to stay a little bit longer because it is literally like kindergarten and primary school here in the lagoons. It's a shallow, protected area for them that the mom can spend time teaching the calf how to be a whale. And we get to see that also. After they spend some time in the lagoons, they're going back together to their feeding grounds in summer. And when they arrive over there, they're going to separate. So that's why overall, they're going to stay between 6 to 7 months they pair together, and it's super cute. Yes, Annie.
Oh, I was just going to say, it makes a lot of sense to me that the more experienced mom would be able to stay longer in the lagoon, because she would have been better at gathering the resources necessary. She's got to have enough energy in order to share that energy with her calves. And so if she did better preparing in the summer months, she would be better prepared to stay longer. Essentially, she'd have enough food that she's literally carrying with her in the form of fat, right? Whereas a less experienced whale is just going to start to be like, my energy is so depleted, I got to get out of here and go get some food. And that's going to push them to maybe make a decision earlier than they would most want to as far as safety for that calf. So tell us about this picture, because this has a lot to do with that energy transfer.
Yeah, so on the top picture, what you see is a pregnant female that arrived in the lagoon around January, okay? And then right in the middle, you're going to see a calf that was born, and that picture was taken right after birth. So it's a tiny, tiny calf. You can see perfect the comparison in size. And the bottom picture, it is the calf after 1 month. So as you can see, it is so interesting how the mom is transferring directly that energy. As the calf is growing, the mom is getting skinnier and skinnier. And this is something that researchers have been very interested recently in studying using drones. We have new technology, of course, and the research evolves with new technology. And by using these drones, we can measure almost gram per gram or liter per liter that is transferring from the female to the calf, and see how the calf is getting chubbier and chubbier and getting ready to start the migration back. And with this technology also, we have taken for many years first pictures of the whales, right? From the right side, from the left side, because we can photo identify the whales. But with the drones, with that view from above, researchers now have also an extra picture to add to their catalog, and is this top view of the dorsal pigmentation pattern of the whales. So that is super cool, because really depends on what you have available. As technology is growing, is what you can do now and use it for a better way. And in this picture right here, you can see some of the numbers. The babies, when they are born, they're going to measure between 4 to 5 meters. That is going to be around 12 feet, okay, to have an idea. And they're going to weigh like a ton, a little bit more. So they're pretty heavy babies. And when we are out there, we can see this. We can see baby calves of gray whales. And we're going to now move a little bit more and to talk about how they do this.
And, you know, one of the things before we move on that is so interesting to me is that in many cases, when we think about drones, I tend to think like about harassing wildlife. Like there's a lot of rules, right? About like we as guides and guests cannot take drones out to go look at the whales, or in many national parks, you can't use them. And that's a good rule in terms of not bothering wildlife. But in this case, with the researchers, they have managed to find a way to research and learn so much about the whales just using photography. And they don't have to then dart the whale or do any kind of invasive technology, which is going to be much harder on that whale than just making images.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So birthing, this moment that is very unique and interesting that happens here in the lagoons. First, what the mom is going to do, they're going to isolate themselves at very specific part of the lagoon that I'm going to show a little bit later. And what the researchers describe of like seeing is they're going to be very active, moving a lot, fluking, as we call, you know, they're trying to get in the moment to bring the baby out. And when they do it, they're going to bring the lower belly area to the side up, That is what the researchers have seen. And then there is some discussion whether the head comes out or the tail comes out first. Of the times that researchers have noticed the calves coming out, for this particular species, the head comes out first, okay? Even though with other cetaceans, it is the opposite. So the head comes out first, and they believe this happens so as soon as they come out, they are able to breathe. What the mom is going to do after that is immediately go underneath the calf to push the calf to the surface. So she's making sure that the calf is breathing, right? And I think that happens also with us in humans. It's the same. You want to be sure that your baby is breathing. And we see a lot of that when we're out there with the tiny calves, that the moms spend a lot of time together, and then they come underneath them, they push them out, they are rubbing. They are very, very touchy animals, and that is so unique because it is also an important moment for them to start that bond between mom and calf. And so yeah, so that is what they're going to do. They're going to be together, they're going to be rubbing like between themselves. And it is so crazy because to have an opportunity to see this special moment, and we are just there because the location of the camp it's perfect, and the base camp is just right next to the lagoon, so we don't have to go that far along to witness amazing moments like this.
That's right. We get to see the relationship between mom and calf. This is them doing that tactile behavior where they're just really, I think it's almost like the human version or the whale version of like snuggling. Yeah. You can tell that they're learning about and connecting via all of this touch that we see. And we are right there on the shores of San Ignacio Lagoon. We're going out, we stay in these cabanas, and we're going out from the cabanas to watch the whales. Now, one of the questions that we get a lot from people is that too much pressure on the whales? In fact, it was one of my first questions when we were preparing and talking about creating this. I know that you've been to lagoons and there's been less people there than other years because of the pandemic. And I'm just so curious how the whales have been doing, like if it's been a good break for them, or, you know, is it good that they don't have so many boats around them? But we know from San Ignacio Lagoon that it's up to the whales if they are going to interact with boats, because they have plenty of space that they can go to where there are no boats. So tell us about this map and where the whales get to go here in the lagoon.
So yeah, and here we have San Ignacio Lagoon map, and as you can see, it's divided in different areas. Where we go to whale watch, it is right in the middle, okay? That area that says right in the middle, that is the whale watching area. Only boats like us, we go there, and we're not allowed to stop in the upper side of the lagoon or in the north end. So we have a very specific place that we can go to. We have rules. We can only stay 90 minutes inside of this area of the lagoon to also give opportunity to other boats. And what is so interesting is that at the north end, right all the way to the north end, it is the most shallow area of the lagoon. Very no movement at all. Like, it's perfect. Glass water, flat as a pancake, as we say in Spanish also. And this is the point where females choose to have their calves. And only researcher boats can access that area of the lagoon, which is the best because, again, we don't want to give pressure to this specific moment, important moment, when the mom is having their calf. So the north end we cannot access. The upper area of the lagoon we can just cross, okay, with the boat because the camp is located around this area in the upper side. So we just take the boat and we move to the whale watching area, and we spend there the time. And when we can have these close encounters with the gray whales. And even the researchers tell us all the time, like, you're not missing that much, because in that middle area of the lagoon is where everything happens. When the mating happens, well, the action, because they're coming in and out of the lagoon in a daily basis. So they always have to pass through that area. And I know that we get that question, like, why so close? Once you're there, you realize first how the captains are so respectful of the whales and how they maneuver the boats. And we are in a specific place, and it is up to the whales to come close. Not every whale is going to come. Some, they're just surfacing, continuing their thing that they're doing, and other whales are the curious ones that come close to the boat and explore and say, who are you? Here we have a mom. Actually, the mom is the one that is being curious in that specific moment, and the calf is right there, almost doing a spy hop, saying, hey, I'm here also. And if they don't want to be in this particular area, they have the rest of the lagoon to move around. Which is a very important thing just to highlight to everybody.
I think it's so incredible the way that whale watching is managed in this area. In fact, I will often say to people, if you want to learn how to run a whale watching zone or area, look to Baja and how they manage this relationship, because it is ultimately very respectful to the whales, and it's also very respectful to the local people there. It is a system where you are required to have a driver who is from the area, and these are almost always fishermen who are taking a break from their fishing season, because that's going to close down in the lagoon for whale watching. So they're giving a break to the fishery, and then they have this alternative income of being a boat captain or somehow being involved in tourism here. And even if we were, say, going on a cruise ship, for example, or when we go on the Seabird, on the ultimate Alaska or the ultimate Baja expedition, even when we do that, we get onto a boat or have the boat drivers come to our boats and have a local person driving that boat. So even when we bring our own boat, we end up switching out the captains, that we are having local people involved in driving those boats. And I think that's just such a fantastic way for tourism to be benefiting everyone who's enjoying that area.
And it is truly ecotourism, because there are in San Ignacio Lagoon, for example, there are other camps also, and that's why we have a time limit in the whale watching area. So everybody has the opportunity to go in and out. Only 19 boats are allowed at the same time in the whale watching area. So if you happen to be boat number 20, you have to wait until the boat goes out for the next one to go in. So that was created by the locals, actually, which it is a unique thing. And they are the ones that are reinforcing their own rules. Another example of that is that only 2 boats can be close with what we call a friendly whale, the ones that, they let us go close, or they come to us sometimes. Only 2 boats are allowed to do that. The other boats have to be waiting at a distance, and then you exchange with the ones that were close. So everybody has a nice experience, because of course that is what we're seeking, to be close with them, to have this like unique connection. And just as a reminder, not every single whale are going to be friendly. Some of them have this behavior. And something that is very interesting is that these friendly whales outside of Mexico, alongside the migration route in the States and in Canada and back in Alaska, they are not friendly, or they are not that relaxed with boats. So something is going on in these lagoons that we can have what you are seeing in these pictures. And that's why, for me, is my favorite place in the world to be because I love whales. So yeah.
That is such a good point. And I think, we don't have time to tell the whole story of how it is that this whale watching started, but briefly, gray whales used to be called the devilfish. There is a time in whaling history, in fact, that first lagoon that you showed up in the far north called Scammons Lagoon, that was named after Charlie Scammon, who was a whaler, who was the first whaler that figured out how to actually hunt this particular species because they were known to attack the boats. And so whalers are said to have jumped off of vessels when they found out that that vessel was going to hunt gray whales. That's how violent that relationship was. They're very protective of their young. You can see the way that their rostrum is built or shaped, that it is a ramming machine. So they were very successful in disrupting whaling until Charlie Scammon figured out that if he would trap the whales at low tide, that would be a way to get them basically with no water. Pretty, tricky kind of thing. Then it was in the 70s, I believe. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the 70s.
Tell us this story because it's such a beautiful story.
So what happened in the 70s is that we had a fisherman that his name was Pachico Mayoral, and he says that he was out with the whales and they were scared of the whales. In Spanish, they would also call them the translation of the devilfish. So they were scared of them and they would make loud noises in their boats, so they would go away. But then he would have this whale that was trying to come, and he would make the loud noises again, and then the whale would come and come. So finally he was like, okay, I have to stop making this sound. And he saw that the whale was just floating right next to him. And he said, okay, maybe I can just put my hand out there and touch this whale. And he did. He came back to the town, tell everybody about it, like, hey, we had this encounter. The whale did nothing to us. They were just trying to get close, and I did this. And no one believed him. So he was taking some other fishermen and friends and telling them about it. And this is how whale watching started here in the middle of the peninsula. It was because of Pachico and his family that they still do this activity. So it was the whales coming back to humans, in the past we had a different relationship with them, and it was the whales the ones that decided to be gentle on us, and so we can now go and spend some time here at this place.
It's so incredibly special, that story. And I love, one of my most favorite things when we do go to San Ignacio is get to learn about this story and understand how incredibly important the gray whales are to the people of San Ignacio. It's just a really beautiful story. But we have two different ways that our guests can come to see gray whales, and both of them are really fantastic. Both of them are going to have people out in the boats and getting to see whales, but it's two different lagoons really that are explored. So let's talk a little bit about the trip where we head to Magdalena Bay and what that is like. We saw the pictures of the cabanas, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but tell us, you and I have both guided this trip on this seabird, and tell us a little bit about this.
So in this trip that we go out and the charter boat, we spend all of our time in the ocean, which is a unique thing because you're always surrounded by the ocean, by the desert landscape of Baja. Here we have some cardones, those cactus that you see, that they are very similar to the saguaros, but they're not saguaros. And so we're always surrounded by this landscape. And we start in Magdalena Bay, as we mentioned, in a small town that the name is San Carlos. And we're moving through the whole complex of Magdalena Bay. It's a very large lagoon also, even though we call it bay, they are lagoons, but we move around the different towns. And as Annie was mentioning before, the local captains use the zodiacs that we have, and they are the ones that are taking us to the perfect locations, to the perfect spots where we can find the gray whales. So it is go out, whale watch. The ones that are not whale watching, we go out and do hikes, and then we go out again. So we spend a lot of time in this on the skiffs actually with the gray whales. And then when we stop in that particular area, the boat moves again through these beautiful channels that you have in one side mangroves, in the other side you have the desert, the dunes. We move up and we finish again in the point that we started actually in San Carlos town. And it is an amazing trip because for me that is so unique that you can spend all your day looking at the ocean and going out several times in the day with the whales. And especially in Magdalena Bay, in the north part of Magdalena Bay, we have moms and calves. So depending where we're going in particular, in the southern part, we have more solitary whales and we see a lot of the mating, but then we move north and then we see the moms and calves. So it is great to be able to have the ship to move because then we can see all the different behaviors of the gray whales. That's why it's so complete to take this kind of trip also.
I think that's one of the really special things about doing this trip with natural habitat, because there's different trips that go to the area and maybe they will go out once to go whale watching or maybe twice, but this is what we are doing on these trips. And yes, you get to learn about the mangroves and see all this beautiful ecosystem, but you're seeing the ecosystem where the whales live, and the focus is getting to spend time with these whales. We're really trying to maximize how much time we get just experiencing these incredible animals, and then we get to enjoy, you know, being with them in these zodiacs, but we also just get to enjoy each other and being on this beautiful boat. It's a really lovely boat. We get to, you know, there's always sort of a fun atmosphere. We get to do lectures on the boat, and we're having a great time even when we're not out watching the whales. So I found that to be just a really special experience to get to sort of be on the water the whole time. You're having a great time from this really wonderful boat where you've got all your needs met, and then getting out to see the gray whales, of course. And then there's the San Ignacio way of doing things, right? And this is where we're staying in these cabanas. Both trips start in Loreto. So both trips, you will go to Loreto, and then from there you go to explore these different places. And the cabanas, they are, for me, they're one of my most favorite places on earth, I have to say, because when you are in those cabanas at night, it is a bit rustic. It is a, you know, a wind powered camp. And so there are some rustic aspects to it, but when you're in those cabanas at night, sometimes you could even hear the whales as you're falling asleep. And I have to say, I think that might be one of my like top 10 experiences, all the places that I've been. No matter what you do, whether you go on the trip for the kind of ultimate experience on the boat, or you go do the adventure and expedition where you're staying at the camp, you will have us as guides, or Teresa is another one of our phenomenal guides. You will have natural habitat adventure guides with you, teaching about the area, teaching about the animals, and just sharing that incredible experience, doing things like learning about the paleobiology and geography of the evolution of the whales, and just really learning everything we can possibly learn about them. So I don't think you can go wrong as far as which adventure you choose. It's just a matter of picking what it feels most comfortable platform, if you will, for where to view the whales from, but both are really special. There's all kinds of behaviors that we get to see in both places. Before we move on to questions, Sophia, I have to ask you, what is your favorite gray whale behavior to see?
Actually, I think we're seeing it right now. It's the spy hopping.
We didn't even plan that.
I know, but I really like the spy hopping because we still don't know why they do it. And this is a question that every season I ask to Dr. Steven Schwartz. He's been working for years and years in Baja studying the gray whales. And every season when we go, we ask the same question. Dr. Schwartz, do you know now why they're doing the spy hopping? And the answer that he always gives to me, and which I love, is just because they can. And it's like, come on. And there are theories, of course, there are a lot of different theories why they bring their heads out just like this. But it is still unknown. So I think that's why I love that kind of behavior. We can see the pleats, we can even sometimes see the eye surfacing the water, looking at us maybe, but it's still unknown. So I think that's why I like that kind of behavior. What is yours, Annie?
As soon as I asked you that question, I thought, oh no, this means she's going to ask me that question.
Yes.
I will say when it comes to gray whales, I'm going to take the spy hopping thing just one step farther for my favorite thing. We often will see, I believe it's the low tide, the outgoing tide, when the tide switches, we start to see spy hopping and like repeatedly spy hopping. And for me, it's like, you add the joy of seeing that spy hopping, which is, whalers thought that the whales were taking their eye out of the water to look at boats, and they do not, almost always they don't take their eye out of the water. I mean, it happens, but it is certainly not common, or like the most frequent, I guess is the best way to say that. But to see that there's something going on with that tide switch, and that they're all doing, not all, but many of them are doing this behavior, it's when they start to do collective things like that. Because I do think there's so much more about how these whales interact with each other, their social relationships. They are far richer than we understand. And so any glimpse into that is what just absolutely fascinates me. My research area started with humpback whales and understanding the social behaviors of their feeding. And it's the same thing. How much are they communicating? How much are they planning? Are they all saying, hey, tide switching, let's spy hop? Or do they feel something and then do it? I will never be bored trying to understand those questions about whales, no matter where you are viewing them. So
good.
However it happens, I highly recommend that people go and get to enjoy this incredible experience. And Nick, we are ready to answer questions if you have any.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie and Sophia. It is time for questions. Before we start the Q&A, I'd like to remind everyone that you can type in your questions using the questions field in your GoToWebinar control panel. We have gotten a good number of questions so far, so we'll try to get through as many of these as possible in the time we have here. One of the questions is, are the whales in Baja also found in Hawaii, or are they different species or just different family groups of same species?
They are different species. As far as we know, gray whales do not go to Hawaii. Now, every once in a while, we have seen a whale take a very strange, like one whale take a strange route and end up in unpredictable places. But that is the outlier and not the norm. Typically, there's many different species of whales that people can see in Hawaii, but humpbacks are what often people are talking about going to see around the same kind of months during the winter months. Humpbacks are going to Hawaii for breeding, mating, the same kind of thing we're talking about here, but different species. There's a group of humpback whales that come to Alaska for their summer months, and then some of those whales go to Hawaii for their breeding and calving, and some of those whales go to Mexico. And then there's a group a small percentage of those whales, and we don't know where they go. So there's another question for you to go study.
Great, thank you. So what do you all know about the physiology that enables whales to get to and from their different destinations along their migration route? Is it something magnetic in their brain or something else?
There are different theories about it. One that is very interesting, it is actually they follow the shoreline, especially gray whales. They are very coastal, a very coastal species. And with that comes a thing that I love to study, that is acoustics, and how they manage to know that over there is the shoreline, is with all the sounds that they are receiving from their environment, following that. And also that moment that we were talking about, being together, mom and calf, it is taught to the next generation. That's why they do the migration from Mexico to the wintering grounds together. So the theory says that they are teaching the calf, like, this is the way that you are going to take from Mexico to your feeding ground.
There's also, you know, fin whales is what a lot of the studies have been around, but it's true of many of the whales. The theory is that fin whales, they're also migrators, that they can communicate up to 1,200 miles. 1,200 miles. That's mind-blowing. Whenever I hear a scientific fact that I think, really? I say, okay, let's cut that in half. Let's just say they exaggerated or got something a little wrong and they were half of it. 600 miles. Imagine being able to communicate 600 miles. Again, cut that in half. 300. It's baffling, even if it's way wrong, and it's not. The evidence just really does show us that they can communicate over great distances. So that's one of the questions I've always had related to that initial question of how do they know where to go? Like, typically animals don't develop such a unique communication way, this adaptation, unless they need it, right? Like, they would develop this way to communicate great distances because it would be helpful for them. So I'm just always curious about that communication piece and what that could have to do with their migration. And a lot of these things are questions for those of us who study these animals as well.
Great, thank you. We had several questions about the typical number of calves that a mother gray whale will have, as well as what age the mothers are when they typically have the calves.
Great, great questions. Every 2.5 years, they have a calf. When do they reach sexual maturity? Around between 11 to 13 years old. And then from there, if they have good conditions, by good conditions, I mean good feeding conditions, they're going to have a baby around between 2 to 3 years. And they're going to continue to have their babies basically until they die. We've had, with the photo identification, we know some whales that they were seen 30 years ago and they were adults in San Ignacio Lagoon. And they were seen last season still with a calf. And we know every 2 to 3 years they're having a baby and they're having a baby and they're having a baby. So yeah, the only thing that they need is good food. If they don't have those conditions that they need to, they are still going to try to make the migration down. And we see them very skinny. And sadly, this is a story that we've been seeing for the last 3 years in Baja, what we call a UMA, an unusual mortality event. So what that means is that we've seen skinnier whales and stranded whales because the feeding conditions in the north are not the best. And with that, then they're going to have a calf maybe every 4 to 5 years. So just some information to put it out there.
There's a really fascinating thing with whales, this idea that they could be, you know, what she just said then is that if we knew we were watching them 30 years ago, and we know that they have to wait until they're 11 to 13, you're starting to talk about whales that are in their 40s and their 50s. There's some theories that we have them go as far as into their 80s. And that they're continuing to give birth that whole time. There are a few whale species, toothed whale species, orcas being one of them, that actually go into menopause. Some of the only animals that we know this to be other than humans, and that's so that the older females can help the younger females. But that is not something that happens with the baleen whales. Pretty amazing stuff.
Awesome, thank you. Several questions about blue whales in the area. Are those things you can see in the lagoons as well? And if so, when is the best time to see those?
Well, this is Sophia's area of study, so you just saw her light up a little bit. So we're going to let Sophia talk about
blue whales. Yes, we do have blue whales, and they're also coming from the States. Actually, the ones that we have are coming from California. We can see them in the Pacific, but outside of the lagoons. They don't come, the only species of whale that comes into the lagoons is the gray whale. The blue whales continue their journey south of the Pacific side of the peninsula. They reach Cabo, where I am right now, and then they go up the Sea of Cortez. And in Loreto is the town that both of our trips start. And Loreto is located in the Sea of Cortez. Loreto is the town to go out and see the blue whales. For the charter boat, actually, we go there first, and we go out and for a day to find the blue whales. And we have them, the season is late February, beginning of March. Very specific season for the blue whales. Sometimes we can find them to the end of March, but most of the time the peak season is late February and beginning of March to go out and see them. It's a feeding ground for them. And yeah, we have around, in the whole season, between 20 to 30 blue whales that they come in good years. So we always have an opportunity to see the largest animal on the earth.
So that is an important thing. That is the difference between these trips. If you come and do the ultimate Baja expedition, where we go onto the boat, that is the trip that we go to see blue whales before we go do that. If you're going to do the San Ignacio trip, where you go and stay in the cabanas, then we do not have that extra time watching blue whales in Loreto.
Great, thank you. Do the gray whales eat along their migration route?
Yes, but the food varies. It is not their main source of food. And some of the theories that we have, because we have pictures of them doing the cratering that they do, some theories are that it's more of the moms teaching the young ones, because we'll even see them practice in the lagoon. You'll see some of that circling around and learning how to feed. The whale literally is going to kind of go almost head first into the sand to eat. It's the strange thing. And then they make like a crater. And so it's easy to look for those craters from an aerial perspective again. So we'll see that they practice in the lagoon and that they will do this on the way up north. It's questionable what amount of energy they're actually getting in the southern part of that journey. We know that where they're really getting their calories is up north.
And even researchers call that like snacking. Like they do try to get something, but it is not it is not important of the energy that they take in from that. It is just like us, like a snack, and that's it.
Thank you. We also have a question about some of the other birds and animals, wildlife that might be seen on either or both of these trips.
This is one of the really cool parts. And I love that you mentioned birds, Nick, because I think that is one of the really special things about these trips. Similar to, what we're talking about with the gray whales as far as migration, San Ignacio Lagoon and Magdalena Bay both have areas where many different birds that spend their time. In fact, I enjoy seeing birds. I'm like, hey, you could have been in Homer, Alaska with me this past summer, and there they are heading down to that area also for mating. I was going to say calving, but that doesn't work with the birds so much. So there are interesting birds there. There's also some endemic to Baja birds that you can see in Loreto, which is something that people do enjoy. We sometimes see dolphins in both of these lagoons, so that's something that people can enjoy watching.
I would add to, especially in San Ignacio, it is an important ground for shorebirds. So we have a lot of different species of shorebirds that are migrating actually in winter. And because we go out and do in the afternoon other activities, we go to the mangrove area and we walk the shoreline and we can see shorebirds. Also, we have like endemic species of warblers in the mangroves. So we do go and explore. And sometimes also we take the boats and we go into the channels in the mangroves to see, like if we have ivies, we have willets, those kind of species in that area. And I would say, like, important apart from the other wildlife that we see is also plants, like the cacti. That kind of landscape is so different to what I've heard. A lot of our guests are so impressed of that Baja landscape, like that desert meets the sea. So the species of plants that we see are unique, very unique, endemic of Baja. So to add more also to, if you're interested in plants, that it is a very important place definitely to come.
I would say learning about desert adaptations of plants would probably be right up there with one of my most favorite things about this trip, because I just look at that landscape and think, like, how could you be living? So it's really cool to learn about that piece as well.
Excellent, thank you. What is the time of day, or is there a particular time of day when gray whales are more or less active than other times?
It depends. Annie mentioned that a little bit before. It depends more on the tides, actually. So if we have the stronger currents as the tide is going up or going down, depending on the moon, is when we see more activity or not. Also, because we have low tide, for example, they're going to be areas super shallow, so the whales cannot go there. So we see more whales in a specific area, and we get a sense of we are seeing more. And it is because of that, because they cannot move to the, by shallow, I mean 6 feet shallow. So they spend more time in the deeper areas, and we see more activity because they're all together. But that depends on the moon, actually. If in the morning or in the evening we see more behavior or not really. It's the same.
Great, thank you. So this is the final question we'll likely have time for today. What books or other resources would you recommend about gray whales and or Baja?
Oh, there's some really good ones. There's a book called Roadside, Geology of Baja. That is it's a quite technical book, but that is a very good book in understanding and learning about the geology and sort of the specifics. There's another book, and I'm hoping that Sophia, I think, is looking this up right now to make sure we get the name right. But there is a book about San Ignacio Lagoon, and Stephen Schwartz.
I have it right here. Yeah. Sorry for the interruption. The name, it's an amazing book. is Lagoon Time, a guide to gray whales and the natural history of San Ignacio Lagoon. The author is Steven Schwartz. He's the researcher that I was mentioning a little bit before. He's been doing a lot of research in this particular area for over 30 years now. So that is one that I really recommend if you're interested in gray whales in Baja. That's like our Bible in a way.
That book is really great because it's not only some of the just the story of how he and his wife went to Baja and kind of fell in love with this area and started this research. It also talks about the lagoon and about the ecosystem and goes into the specifics on the gray whales. So it's really a book that covers all of what you would want to learn about the area. And it's a good read too. It's enjoyable to read.
And there's another one that is very interesting, maybe a little bit more deep into the physiology, biology of the gray whales. The name is E. robustus. That is the scientific name of the gray whale. The name is The Biology and Human History of Gray Whales. The author is James Sumich. Actually, James Sumich and Dr. Steven Schwartz are very good friends, and they both have their own books. One is more like anatomy, physiology, and the other one is more, like Annie was saying, the history and that love for the lagoon and the people and the whales.
Those are great, thanks. We got a couple requests just now. If you both could please repeat the titles of the books. I think a couple people would like to check those out.
Sure, and then Nick, sometimes does is she puts them in the notes there, so that people
I'll
can
do that as well.
Yeah, can read it. So I'm going to let you repeat those, Sophia.
So the name starts. Lagoon Time, a guide to gray whales and the natural history of San Ignacio Lagoon. The author is Steven Schwartz. Schwartz is S-W-A-R-T-Z. You can find it in Amazon, both books. And the other one is E. robustus, The Biology and Human History of Gray Whales. The author is James Sumich. You can also find it on Amazon.
Great, thank you. All right, that's the last question we have time for today. So I'll hand it back to you two for any closing comments.
I'll let you go first, Sophia.
First, thank you for staying tuned, the whole thing, to listening to us. I think both Annie and me were so passionate about this particular spot. It is our common ground between Alaska and Baja, so Annie always comes, and I hope to see you here in Baja to be your guide and to take you to this amazing place that it is my favorite place in the world. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate it, and thank you, Annie, also.
And thank you so much. Thanks to Nick for helping us get all of this happening. We really appreciate the technical support. And Sophia, thank you so much for joining me today. It's always just such a pleasure to get to work with you in any capacity. So I really appreciate that. And to those of you who signed on, thank you so much. We absolutely love, obviously, this place and these whales. And to know that there are people out there who want to learn about them with us really brings a lot of joy to our hearts. So thank you for that. Also, stay tuned because Sophia and I did decide we must plan a webinar on the paleobiology and geography of these whales. We want to learn about the evolution, what came first, Mexico or Alaska. And next week, I just want to put a plug in on Earth Day. We are going to have a very special webinar. So next Thursday, please stay tuned. But of course, we also have one tomorrow. Thanks so much, guys. We really appreciate it.
Excellent.
Gracias.
Thank you both so much. And thanks for taking the time to present. And thank you to everyone who tuned in today. As Annie mentioned, be sure to join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature, Coyotes, Song Dogs of North America, presented by Expedition Leader Aaron Bott. You can also visit our website at nathab.com/webinars for the upcoming webinar schedule and keep an eye out for our Sunday email. We also recorded today's presentation. We'll send you a link to the recording, and we'll also have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude this webinar. Thank you both so much, and goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.